Good morning and welcome to episode 1 of our brand new weekly YouTube series brought to you from and by JD Classics. So the first episode, we're going to actually focus on our time at Hampton Court Palace, where we've just spent a wonderful weekend as a partner of the Concours of Elegance. Later in the video, we'll tell you a little bit more about what you can expect in future episodes. But until then, let's take a look at Hampton Court Palace. So we are busily exploring the wonderful Hampton Court Palace, seeing all the amazing cars they've got here. Honestly, I'm like a kid in a candy store. So we thought you might like to see some of the cars that will be auctioned this afternoon. So follow us. So as we make our way through all these wonderful courtyards, halls and tunnels, we thought it might be interesting for you to know that the company that is actually running the auction here today, Gooding & Company, was the very same company that ran the auction out in Pebble Beach just a couple of weeks ago, which featured one of our previously restored Jaguar E-Types. Now that E-Type was actually lower estimated to go $175,000. Upper estimate was $225,000. The car, as I said, previously restored by us a few years ago, fetched a whopping $335,000. Now that is a great price, a great result. Let's go and find this auction. So here we are in this wonderful courtyard, and as you can see, we are surrounded by Bugattis, Jaguars, BMWs, Aston Martins, Ferraris, so many beautiful cars. And I've actually just spotted down there the most wonderful Aston Martin DB5. So let's go and take a closer look at that one. So here we are, we've arrived at this 1965 DB5 Aston Martin Vantage, and what a stunning car it is. Estimated 900 to 1.2 million, so sadly a bit out of my price range, but 4 litre straight 6 engine. It's absolutely stunning. I can only imagine what this sounds like and would feel like to drive, and hopefully one day I'll get the chance to take one out. But what a cracking car. Just before we leave this wonderful courtyard, I thought I'd have to point out to you this amazing 1976 Benelli 750 SEI. Look at that, it's 6 cylinders on a bike, so that's pretty impressive. Apparently 71 brake horsepower at 8,500 revs, so this wouldn't be bad on a long journey, to be fair. Say to me, why do you love classic cars? Well, apart from the obvious, which is classic cars are amazing to drive, amazing to look at, a great investment, they also bring you to places like this, Hampton Court. And I think you'll agree, this is not a bad setting for a car show.
Two distinct areas of the business, restoration, as well as, what do we call it? Do we call it?
It's an interesting question, Roger.
Well, you and I have had this conversation a number of times before.
We have indeed, over this.
Yeah, over this. Yeah, so, I mean, it's a growing part of the business. Yeah, they've got a microphone for you there.
Yes. Thank you.
Not just
yes.
you, but everybody else. And I am, and you know my views on these things, but they're becoming increasingly popular and increasingly appropriate, I think.
Yes, that's right. Well, we've got a history going back quite a few years with this car. I think it was about 8 or 9 years ago you first looked at the prototype at Essen. Yes, it's going very well. I'm basically handing the whole company over to JD Classics, especially the marketing part of it, and it's going very well. And again today, the car's received a tremendous amount of interest. But then, as Julia said, something completely different.
Oh, it is completely different.
Just coming back to this, so we've got a Type R chassis, original chassis, not an R-Type Continental, but a Type R, which is an early 50s chassis all the same.
That's right.
And this is essentially a reimagined sort of version of the Continental.
Completely reimagined. It's imagined as a slightly more sporting version of the Continental. It's a fastback coupe rather than a fastback saloon.
What's the engine? Is it a 4.9? Is it
As Richard knows, mechanically it is absolutely original as a LF crew.
So it's based on the Type
R-Type.
R-Type rather than the R-Type
Saloon rather than
That's 4.5 litres.
4.5
Yeah.
litre, 6-cylinder, yeah.
Right. And what's the performance for the R-Type compared to the Continental? How did it? Because obviously the R-Type Conti was famous for a sort of 120 miles an hour on its modern magic carpet ride.
Yeah, I mean the Continental was considerably high performance car than the standard car. Whether it ever really achieved 120 mile an hour safely, I'm not sure. I think it was blowing
I think if you
tyres
asked Briggs Cunningham, he'd tell you it did. He had 4 of them at Le Mans, and drove them enthusiastically around the circuit.
As track cars, yeah. I think tyres were the limiting factor back in the day, but this car performs very, very well. It's light.
It's got aluminium body.
It's all aluminium, yeah. It's all hand-wheeled aluminium. It's got the Continental ratio back axle, which it deals with happily due to its weight. Yeah, and it's an excellent, relatively high-speed touring car.
And it's a generous 2-seater.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's got power steering, air conditioning.
So it's luggage rather than, you haven't set out to put people in the back, you set out to put luggage in the back.
This fastback, it's not suitable. Well, you get 2 little ones in the back.
But that's not what it's meant for. It's meant for
So when you say
to
you've handed the project over to JD, so Julia, what's exactly the connection? Are you building the bodies for these now? Are you wheeling out the bodies, or are they done elsewhere?
So we actually own Bensport now. So JD Classic has actually bought the company. So we are Bensport. So we produce this car.
with a bit of help from a bloke who knows something about it.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that what we were saying earlier, Richard, look, I mean, ultimately, owners of Bentleys or other motor cars going back to the dawn of motoring were modifying cars, changing bodies, changing engines, changing other things, and saying, okay, that's just, and that was exactly what coach builders were doing in the day. So, I mean, there are different views on it, of course, and, you know, I think each to their own. I think it's personal choice, and this is a wonderful example of what, you know, as you say, it might have looked like had they produced a coupe.
Well, our bit of fun with this was if
well, it was a coupe, I guess, but
if the company had ever considered racing a car post-war, because a couple of Derby Bentleys did very well at Le Mans post-war, if they'd raced something like this, what would it have looked like? And, you know, we came up with this. It doesn't have to have a Louvre bonnet. It doesn't have to have the Le Mans type filler caps on the back. But this is what we thought. Well, yeah, perhaps.
So if somebody wants one, then how do they go about it? They buy it. They come to you with an R-Type. And
we can supply the donor car. That's not a problem. We've got donor cars, and we've even got at the moment an open car with a removable hardtop on the stocks, which shouldn't take too long to finish. So, in addition to this one, I think it'll look very pretty.
I think
well, given, I mean, we've got a few people to chat with, but let's have a chat about the XJ13, because that was obviously an extremely important development project for Jaguar. They weren't racing at this time, but they did develop the 4-cam V12 engine to go racing, and came up with this.
How pretty is that?
Oh, it's such a gorgeous engine. I mean, there's so much going on underneath there, but the XJ13, of course, was lost in a fire, I believe.
This was it crashed at Myra, didn't it? So it was testing at Myra test track.
Absolutely.
I can't remember who was driving it. Was it Norman Jewis was driving it at Myra, the Motor Industry Research Association test tracks in Nuneaton on the bank circuit, and I can't remember the reason why, but it crashed there and burned.
It did, and defective tyre, I think. Is that right, Paul?
It is right. Yeah, we've done some quite close research into what caused that accident. There were all sorts of reasons put forward. One was that Norman lost the car. One was that a wheel collapsed. But we're pretty certain now that the car, which had been, during the day of the accident, had been going around the circuit quite happily at low speeds in a making promotional videos for the new V12 E-Type. At the end of the day, somebody asked Norman to go out and take the car for a few quick laps, which he did, and there's no question that it had a tyre failure because the tyre had been repaired. I'm not sure the speed the car was going. It was probably something around 100 mile an hour. The tyre blew, the car bounced into the top part of the railings around the track, and then subsequently went onto the infield and rolled over and spun over and wrecked itself, and luckily didn't wreck Norman.
Well, I was going to say, I think we know Norman Jewis was too good a driver to make that sort of mistake. And if you know Myra, the test track there, it's flat on sections and banked on sections. It's not a constant oval. And the top barrier is wooden posts with metal, with steel wires through them. So if you break a post, the wires pull you in. It's an old system. It's a very practical system. So it would have thrown the car in if it blew a tyre rather than allowing it to go over the top.
And luckily, the car looked absolutely wrecked, and it finally came to a stop. But incredibly, the monocoque hadn't been damaged, the engine hadn't been damaged, and Abbey Panels, who built the original body, rebuilt the car for Jaguar with a brand new body. This car, this body that's now on this car, which is the second body that this car has actually had, is an exact copy of the factory car. And this was made by scanning the factory car, making bucks and tooling for building this body. So externally, this car now is an absolute copy of the factory car. And as we were saying, this has got one of the very rare Jaguar 4-cam engines which escaped from the factory.
Escaped,
yeah. There was also some stories about how the engines came out of the factory, but research into this has also shown that it was all perfectly legitimate. The engines were purchased. This car was originally built by a guy called Brian Winfield, and he bought 2 of the engines, this one, which is engine number 8, and he also bought engine number 5, which Jaguar incredibly had been developing as an 8-cylinder in the 12-cylinder block. That engine never came to anything. That engine's now in America, and this engine number 8 is now in this car.
And you mentioned Norman Jewis, of course. I mean, for those that don't know, he was chief test driver for Jaguar in the 50s and 60s, and I think incredibly capable, quite a small man.
Yeah.
Only died, 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah.
He's in his 90s, but if he turned up at an event, he could remember everything. And I'm sure if anyone knew the tyre blew or not, he would know, because he knew the stories, and he would talk about, he took the car down to Geneva for the launch of the E-Type. Yeah. Wonderful storyteller, and I think someone that the race drivers for Jaguar at the time feared turning up at the test track because he was as quick as most of them, if not, quicker.
Yeah.
Well, just briefly, we're going to move on in a minute, but briefly tell us about these restorations here as well. So has somebody brought the car to you and said, please restore my motor car?
No.
Or have you've done it?
Yeah.
You've done it and you will sell it to somebody. Yeah. So you've chosen the specification.
Yeah.
You take it back to the original spec, or have you changed it, or what have you done with it?
There's been modifications to make it a more comfortable ride, let's say, so it's still as useful as any classic would be, but with a few modern enhancements that make it a more pleasurable drive.
Well, so, essentially the services of JD Classics are still, as they've always been, largely focused on Jaguar and British motor cars, restoration, race preparation.
Yeah.
Of course, you were doing extremely well with Jaguar, prepared by JD Classics.
Absolutely.
Won a lot of trophies. And are you still involved in the Mille Miglia? Is that still?
We are actually, yes. Next year we're not a sponsor, but we are actually taking a few cars and packages to Mille Miglia 2025. Yeah, looking forward to it. Yeah.
All right, this one.
GT40. Yeah, this is it's a P chassis continuation, Shelby certified. So it is a P chassis 2262. This one, a beautiful example
great racing history. It was actually built in 2015, but based on the Mark I 1965 version. Very successful, raced at Goodwood 2017, Whitson Trophy winner, raced 2018, last raced in 2019, but has its racing papers until 2026, but it's also road going as well, if you're brave enough to take it on the road. Because as you can see, the clearance is not good.
Not so good in the Tesco's car.
No, absolutely not.
Well, I think, Julia, thank you for telling us a bit about. We've got to see 3 other people, and we're on a bit of a tight schedule because we're going to get back for dinner tonight. So it's so good to see you all. Thank you, and ladies and gentlemen, do come and see JD Classics and learn a bit more about their services. Thank you.
So here we are at the end of day 3 at the Concours of Elegance at the wonderful, most beautiful Hampton Court Palace. So thank you very much to our host for having us. We've had a wonderful time. Thank you for Aaron the artist, who's been with us for most of the 3 days, painting our wonderful cars. Thank you to everyone that's taken the time to come and see us at our stand. And all that's left for me to say is thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you again in 2025. So we hope you enjoyed that short video on Hampton Court Palace. I know we had a wonderful weekend and we're already planning and looking forward to next year. Anyway, I did promise you at the beginning of the video that we would be bringing you more information about what you can expect in these weekly episodes from JD Classics. And that is, we'll be featuring any new cars that have come into us, what's coming up in the future, shows, events, award ceremonies, that type of thing. We'll also be having interviews with various people throughout the industry. So we'll either be traveling to them or they may come to us, and we'll be able to hopefully bring you some very interesting content for you. We'd love your suggestions as well. So please do get in touch with us and let us know what you would like to see. We also want to showcase some of our customer cars. So, or even if you're not yet a customer, please do get in touch if you have a car that you'd like us to feature in one of our future episodes. We'd love to hear from you. So that's about it for episode 1. So all that's left to say is we hope you have a great week, and we'll see you in episode 2.